Hi, my name is Bev Hutney. Today I am going to help you get started with planned giving. This presentation is designed to give you the tools, the information you need to launch a very simple and effective bequest campaign. A little bit of background about me. I am the former CEO of a national marketing firm that specializes in planned giving for nonprofits. For more than 20 years, I designed marketing strategies, created content, technology to help nonprofits raise planned gifts. And I was also I initiated and managed about a half dozen national research projects that came up with some groundbreaking results that have formed the blueprint for how nonprofits market planned gifts today. Okay, let's get started. I have a question for you. Do you believe that planned giving is complicated? True or false? Well, a lot of people look at planned giving and they're pretty intimidated, and it can seem like a very involved thing to do. But the good news is that Giving USA released a study in 2021 in which the planned givers that they talked to, most of them said that it isn't that complicated. Less than 10% would describe it as difficult. So you can rest assured that this process is going to be relatively pain-free for your donors and for you. And you can share that with them as well in your marketing messages. This isn't some big rigmarole. It's fairly straightforward and achievable. Before we go any farther, it would be really helpful if you read the 3 documents that are provided with this presentation, the background reading. The first one is the Planned Giving Launch Checklist. That's an overview of the 10 high-level steps that are involved in launching and maintaining a program. The second document I have for you is the Case for Planned Giving. And this is really helpful to distribute to your board, to your boss, to staff members, to help them understand the tangible and intangible value of having a high-functioning planned giving program. And then the last document is a basic overview of the terms and definitions that are involved in planned giving. Certainly there are people who are experts in the minutia of planned gifts, and it can be complicated. But what we're going to ask you to focus on is the uncomplicated part, which is bequest giving. And luckily that's the way most planned gifts are made. 80% of planned gifts are bequests. And those are simple and straightforward to do. It involves just inserting a few sentences into a will or a trust document. We'll get into that here in a minute. But know that if you just have an ear for the terms, understand this document, you can always find somebody that will help you through any more complicated situation that you might get into. Okay. Before you launch the letter campaign that we're going to prescribe here, there is some paperwork that needs to be done. And luckily, once again, we're providing templates for the documents that you need. I recommend you have these 3 things in place before you start. The first is a gift acceptance policy. You may have one. If you don't, this is a template that was created by the National Nonprofit Management Center. It's a really nice document. The purpose of it is to outline the kinds of gifts that you will accept, to think about and articulate what are the restrictions that you will allow donors to place on gifts, the special circumstances, really set up the boundaries, and then to think about the types of gifts that you will receive with no questions asked, and those that might want to go through a special review process. Maybe it's a piece of land. Sometimes people want to give you odd things like crops. So you want to think all that through before you get started. The second document that we're giving you is a sample of a gift intention form. And this is really handy to give to a donor once they've let you know that they intend to make a donation. And some will fill this out, some won't. That's okay. For those who do, it's very helpful because it gives you the details around perhaps the value of the gift, what the type of asset it is, special circumstances with the family, that sort of thing. What you've got here is the actual writable PDF form that the North Texas Food Bank uses, and it's a nice place for you to start. You can customize based on that. And then finally, you're going to want to pull together the legal language that works for a donor to insert into their will or trust document. And that legal language is important that this is the precise language North Texas Food Bank uses. It's really important to get the name right. It can't be generic, like I give $10,000 to the food bank, because there's lots of food banks. So it needs to be precise. In this situation, it's the North Texas Food Bank of Plano, Texas. You'll also want to make handy your employer identification number, EIN, and then identify who is the contact person and how do people get a hold of that person at your organization if someone has questions or wants to talk about making a planned gift. So pull all of those things together. And then we want you to start thinking about who your prospects are going to be. How do you pull together that list of folks that you're going to mail to? I'm going to suggest a two-pronged approach, one based on age and one based on your relationship to that person. Starting with age, this is really important. Back to some of that research that I was a part of, we found one of the big pieces of information we found is that age is the single most critical identifying factor when you're thinking about prospects for planned giving. And I was shocked to learn that people in their 40s, at the time of this research, people in their 40s were nearly as likely as the oldest Americans to actually have a planned gift in place. And that was an aha moment. So that then became a viable cohort for planned giving. So if you don't have age on your database, that's something that I suggest you take a pause and you get. And you do that by going to an age append service. It's a very reliable and inexpensive thing to do. It usually costs about 10 cents for every record that they match. The way it works is you take your database and you export records, give it to them. The more information you provide in a record, the better your match rate will be. And you only pay for the records that you match. They match age on what they can find, and then you insert that back into your database. Once you've got age, let's segment into these three groups. The first group is age 40 to 54. And these are people who are great because they're building wealth, they're launching their families, and as we know from that prior research I mentioned, they're open to the idea of making a bequest to you. The second cohort that we look at are people age 55 to 69, and this is really the sweet spot because they're probably in their primary earning years. They've established themselves financially, their families are launched, and they're starting to think about retirement planning. And you want to be beside them as they're having those conversations and putting those plans in place, because you want to insert the idea of a charitable component into those plans. And then the final cohort are retirees age 70 plus. These people likely have significant assets, and you want to suggest the idea of making a donation to you using those assets. So that's how you pull people out of your database and off to the side based on age. The next way you're going to look at your prospect pool is based upon your relationship with them. And the obvious place to start is with people that are making donations to you. And it's donations of any size, starting for any length of time. We also found out, or I found out as part of the research that I was a part of, that of people who had planned gifts in place, I was shocked to learn that many of them had only been making cash donations to that charity for less than 2 years. So they were very new donors, yet they had a planned gift in place. There was 20% of the people with a planned gift in place. There was another 20% that had never made a cash donation to the organization that was named in their will. And that's really a topic for another day, but it's why you hear all the time about nonprofits who just have these gifts kind of fall out of the sky from people that they had never really had a lot of contact with before. So for our purposes, you're gonna look at people who are in the right age group and who have made a donation of any amount. Doing it consistently is helpful. That just shows increased engagement and interest in you. And the numbers, it really sort of depends on how many numbers you get. If you have 1,000 people who have been giving to you for the last 5 years, you may not go out any farther than 5 years. But if you've only got 50, well, then maybe you're going to go out 10 years and add in a few more names, that kind of thing. So you're going to look at frequency of giving in any amount. Do not sleep on the $25 donor, because they often come through for you in the end. The next segment I suggest you look at are staff, board members, and volunteers, because at any point in time, they are the people that are most connected to you. So look for current folks in that arena, and then also past staff, volunteers, and board members. And there's a third group that I want you to have special eyes on. If you have gotten any donations from people that are donating to you through their IRA in the form of a qualified charitable distribution, they're special because they understand the idea. Well, first of all, they care about you and they're donating to you, but they understand the concept of giving through retirement assets. And that's a big step. So I would pull them out and kind of put them in a special box as well. Okay, you've got your list of who you're going to send to. And as I mentioned, we want you to focus solely on bequests. And we want you to put these planned giving prompts, bequest prompts, in all of your marketing materials. And that would include your website, likely, in your annual report, your newsletters, just sort of the regular fundraising type communications that you have, and regular communications that you have with your audience. We're focusing on bequests for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, they're easy to do. It's easy for you. It's easy for the donor. That's part of the messaging that you're going to impart to them. It's flexible. It's something that they can change their mind on, revoke at any time. That gives the donor peace of mind. You know what? If I need these assets at a later point, I can change my mind and redo this. Now, here's something for you to know. It's unlikely, and we have research on this, it's unlikely that a donor is going to remove you from their will once you're there. They might add another nonprofit, but if you do your job right, if you stay in touch, you steward donors, you maintain communication, and you don't upset them, it's unlikely that they will replace you. So feel free to message to people that this is a revocable gift. And then third, bequests of any size can be impactful, and you can let donors know this as well. You know, if they are going to offer you 10% of what's left over after they've satisfied all the other requirements of their estate and provided for their heirs, that sort of thing, even that small amount can be really meaningful for you. Next, we need you to write a letter, and we're going to help you with that. I put together a template and used all of the best practices that I know in putting together a direct mail fundraising letter. And why am I suggesting a letter to you through the good old-fashioned US Post Office? That's because it's physical, it's this tangible thing, and a really nice piece of direct mail is special in this day and age when we're bombarded with emails and text messages. So think about that for a minute. When you write this, do you want to tuck it inside of an actual greeting card or along with a postcard that you offer as part of your materials? Do you want to put it in a colored envelope? I would definitely hand address it. You can get volunteers in with nice handwriting to help you address envelopes. Go to the post office, buy a physical nonprofit stamp, and put a live stamp on it, because that's going to help it get opened as well. So create something special. You can tuck in a sticker or a bookmark, or if you've got a little thing, something to entice people. If that shows up in my mailbox, I'm going to open it. How many of these do you send? We talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the size of the prospect pool that you're going to pull together. Maybe you have 100 names and you're just going to mail all 100 letters at once. Maybe you have 1,000 names. I would recommend that you throttle that mailing based on your capacity to respond, because the next step is really important. We're asking you to respond to every single person that you mail to reach out to them, either through an email, a phone call, another little note that you jot and send off to them. Maybe you do all three, but the follow-up is critical. Now, I know that following up is, for many people, the most intimidating part of this, but it's where you're going to shine. And I've put together a follow-up script to help you with this. It includes some language for introducing the bequest concept, legacy language, in a conversation naturally. And it also includes some ways that you can overcome common objections, some information to help counter common objections. What you're really trying to do here is get to a face-to-face conversation with someone where you can talk about a bequest. But know that it takes a lot of touch points before you may even get there. And so that brings me to my next question for you, which is, okay, you've mailed out these letters, you've gone through the follow-up cycle, you've covered everybody. What if nobody raises their hand and says, okay, I'm willing to do this? What if you have a few nice conversations, but nothing really happens? What if you can't get a hold of anybody and nobody responds? Is your campaign a failure? And this is where I tell you, no, it's not, because planned giving is what we call a low incidence activity. Fewer than 10% of Americans make a planned gift. So you are searching for diamonds in the rough. It's like looking for an expensive Titleist golf ball in a murky pond. They're hard to find, but it's worth it when you do. So know that even the best, most successful planned giving programs, and I can share this with you based on personal experience, are often experiencing response rates that are a fraction of 1%, and that's considered good. And sometimes no response happens, but you keep at it, because planned giving is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you've ever run a marathon or thought about it or watched people do it, what they're focusing on is the next step. It's just getting started and keeping going. And it's not something that comes to fruition typically right away. So know that that's part of the process. what we've given you here is all the things that you need to get started. And so I encourage you to put all of this material together and simply go. Good luck.